Yeah, to drive from one town to another and have the time change.
But they're not on Eastern time zone anyway, right? But they're not in the Eastern time zone either.
They're central. It's on the news a couple days
So we
ago.
gain an hour when we go. Yeah, the whole state of Arizona, they don't do daylight savings.
Well, I can
But that'd be
understand the whole
weird
state.
for, like,
not
good.
parts of the state. Well,
My watch
parts,
says
some
7.
parts. That's
Chris, do you know about Kevin McCovey's
across the
status? Is
street
he
in a
a
different
minor?
time zone.
He just,
Smaller format for it.
He wanted to take care of that with the budget committee, or with that finance.
Oh, I see.
budget
Okay.
committee.
And that hasn't been called? Or?
Correct.
Who's Christine?
Right.
Okay, yeah, he's been sick. Exposed. That was a nice picture, photo. I got a release, or a web release or something from the government. And it was his picture.
Well,
It looked like it was a movie star.
maybe.
Well, I think he won some kind of an award, but they didn't say anything. So this really interesting. It was from our website, from the county.
Oh, okay, yeah. He does have a very nice photo for the county.
Especially when most of those look like mug shots. Kind of like your driver's license picture. It's never really good.
Okay, today is the 17th. Thank you. I had to do that, right?
I wrote 2010 the other day.
Michael on there?
I see a head shadow.
Yeah, I don't know, I can't see through.
All right, we're straight up 6 o'clock. The March meeting of the Grand Traverse County Park and Rec Commission is called to order. Marilyn, will you please call the roll?
Bob Carsons,
Here.
Russell Clark is excused, Peter Doran is excused, Bill Dorier,
Here.
Scott Joseph is absent, excused,
Yes.
Al Larson,
Here.
Rebecca Cass,
Here.
Chris Nextbauer.
here.
Kevin McGallier is excused, and Dave Taylor.
Here. All right, as a note of administration, I received Commissioner Joseph's letter of resignation shortly before walking out the door this evening. He cited family issues with regard to scheduling, very busy at work and very busy at home and unable to devote the time that he needed. That makes our commission a commission of 9 at the moment. We have a quorum this evening. We go now to our first segment on public comment. Any person is permitted to address our commission in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. We do have a few rules on how we conduct the public comment section, so any person wishing to address the commission will come up to the front table and state name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, except if we ask questions. And the amount of time is 3 minutes, which I can extend at my discretion. Is there any public comment at this time?
Hello. My name is Nancy Stanwyck, and my address is 4415 Wyatt Road, Traverse City. And I am back today. When I was here last month, you asked me if I would get some information about different pools in really all of Michigan and what they were charging their swim clubs. So I don't know if you want me to read my information or if I should hand it in to you.
I'd be interested in your summary and your assessment of what the data says, and then we'd love to see your information.
Okay. What I'd like to say is that probably about a quarter of the people that I emailed, called, and left messages for actually called me back. This is an extremely busy time for swim teams because the state meet is this weekend. So I'm hoping to get more information in, and I can email someone what I get. I talked to Otsego Community Sportsplex, Cadillac, did not hear back from Manistee, Calcasta Coliseum, Holland Aquatics, Jenison High School, Byron Center, Zeeland, Rockford, West Ottawa. So I tried to do, first of all, the teams that are similar to our situation, and then I tried to do the teams that we actually competed with, which is kind of two entirely different things. We compete downstate more than we do here. So teams that are somewhat similar at Otsego Community Sportsplex is they have two pools, 6 lanes, 25-yard length pools. One's an activity pool, one is a 6-lane lane pool. They have a water slide, diving well, $110 an hour for the high school and the club teams, which is slightly less than what we're charged. It is county-owned, and incidentally, they rent their ice rink for $150 an hour. I know that our ice rink is a different situation, you were saying. Cadillac is a YMCA-owned. The way that they go about their business is each swimmer is responsible for $20 a month fee. They belong to the Y or their family belongs to the Y. In addition, they have various fees for different levels of competition, but it's between $36 and $45 a month, not per lane, so it's a little bit different. Coliseum was the least expensive. They charge $70 an hour for the pool. They rent it 2 days a week, and the third day is free. They don't have to pay anything. Holland Aquatics, they have 2 pools. They have a 50-meter and that's a 17-lane pool. It's a huge complex. And then they have one 25-meter. They charge $88 an hour. And the high school is free because they consider it included in their tax base. So it must be figured into that. Jenison High School is 50-meter pool. School-based rate is $50 an hour to rent out the whole pool. The high school team has no charge. And they also have a club team. They do it a little bit differently, and it's $310 per season per swimmer. So what I found out basically is everybody does it completely differently. It seemed as though we were pretty much on the high end, but I think everything is, it's like apples and oranges. Everything is different from the other one, so I don't know that there's a clear-cut answer. I know Byron Center, Zeeland, Rockford, West Ottawa, they don't charge their teams anything because it's figured into the school tax base. So the teams don't rent anything. That's just part of, I'm assuming like other teams that they have fundraising that they do. And one thing that I was really interested in is the Jenison High School. I said, well, if you don't charge them for anything, how do you make your money? And they said, we do it, our meets are our fundraisers. And for their meets, they make anything between $15,000 and $30,000 a meet. But it's a big high school complex. So that's what I found out. And I'll hand this in. I'm a terrible typist. I'm really sorry. And I have a lot of other schools and in pool situations to hear back from. And so when I do, who should I send the information to?
Probably the best is to send it to Marilyn.
Okay. So that was the result, and I was hoping to hear from more, and I'm sure it'll trickle in as soon as they're completely, this is just a really super busy time for them.
Okay.
So, and then I believe you emailed me today?
Yes,
And did you get my email
I did.
back?
Thank you very much.
I did find out something in addition to that. Did you want to know the rest of that story, or?
Yes, I'd be interested in that. I sent an email asking her the question of whether, just to confirming whether the breakers did background checks on their coaches and assistant coaches prior to them working with the swimmers. And the
So-
answer was yes, is what I got.
Correct. And the rest of the story is to be a coach on deck, to be a certified coach on deck, you have to go through training, and you belong to, is it USS or USA Swimming?
USA Swimming.
USA Swimming. USA Swimming, even just to be a member, to be a coach on deck, a certified coach, they do a 2-year background check on their coaches. That's standard protocol. In addition to that, when we hired our most recent head coach, Jason, we went through his resume, and I personally called and emailed everybody that was given on the list, and I talked to the heads of every swim club, I think in the last 4 years that he belonged to. So yes, we definitely do the background checks.
Okay, very good. Thank you much.
Thank you.
Any additional public comment? Okay. All right, next, no special orders of business or presentations, action on the consent calendar. Are there any commissioners that would wish to remove any items from the receive and file or the approvals list? All right, hearing none, I would accept a motion to receive and file all the listed items, including the February minutes.
I'll make that motion.
All right,
I'll support.
okay, moved in support to receive and file the 8 items listed on the agenda plus the minutes from February. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, under old business, policy governance. All right, I sent out by email, and Marilyn has hard copies as well that were put on your desk. I've been thinking a lot about the Carver model, and I'm struggling with this a little bit, so I'll throw out what my thoughts are, and I would appreciate your comments or your inputs on this. I really liked what Carver had to say in his book on his model. My primary goal is not to adopt the Carver model, but to do whatever we can to have the commission be effective and efficient. Carver says in there many times in his book that the model is not intended to be adopted piecemeal or just certain parts but not other parts. And it says if you're going to do it, we're going to do it all at once. And as well, when Commissioner Maxbauer made that as a promise last year that we wouldn't adopt it bit by bit. I've got some problems, and I'm not sure how to solve them. I think the governance policy that I wrote and that you have on your desk is really fairly non-controversial. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think there's a lot of stuff that does. It's really just an internal document that focuses how we will operate as a board and how we will operate on a very basic level with our director. The other parts of the Carver model, the ends policy is I think critical. It's critical to the existence of this board. I think we have to have a clear definition for what we stand for and where we want to go and what it is we're trying to accomplish. I feel it's critical that we come up with an ends policy and we adopt an ends policy. When it gets to the other parts, like the board CEO linkage, then there are other issues. Most of that has to do with, under the model, how the board evaluates the director. And that gets a little bit sticky because, as you know, the director doesn't work directly for the commission. He works for the county administrator. And then the evaluation under Carver is conducted strictly in view of what the ends policy is. without an ends policy, it doesn't make any sense to move forward and adopt a policy of evaluation for a director when there is no ends policy. So those two things are tied together. Moving on to the executive limitations, at first I thought this was not a big deal because we were just going to lay down a set of behaviors that we didn't want the director to do, but I began to think about this, and it becomes more difficult because the whole Carver model is based on the premise that the commission sets the vision for the Parks and Rec department, and then the director goes out and executes that vision, and the director is free to do whatever he wants to as a reasonable interpretation of that vision, up to, but not surpassing those executive limitations. Well, so essentially the director is free to do whatever he feels is appropriate. In theory, that's a good idea. However, this is where it starts to go into other areas, and one of those areas is the Board of Commissioners. And as we've seen with the baseball issue, the Board of Commissioners would have to be completely on board with letting the director of the Parks and Rec Department do, whatever he felt was appropriate. And I'm not sure that we have that relationship established yet with the Board of Commissioners, where, with regard to the baseball, they're telling us what to do. And telling us what to do, they'd be telling Jason what to do, and that would be outside of the Carver model. Likewise, I'm not sure yet that we as a Park and Rec Commission are ready to take that big a step to say, okay, we haven't given you much direction in the past, director, that's been clear and concise and defined and structured, and now go to it. Here's the whole thing. I'm afraid that would be, we ought to crawl before we walk, before we run, and I think that adopting the entire Carver model all at the same moment would be risky at minimum. We don't have enough policy yet with regards to ends policy and what our priorities are, in my opinion, yet to give the director marching orders and say, here's our philosophy, here's our policies on how to operate, go forth and prosper. Clearly, without an ends policy, we can't. All this stuff, the executive limitations doesn't work, and neither does evaluation of the director. And so that leaves me with a problem, and the problem is that I think the governance policy stuff sort of helps. It doesn't dramatically change who we are or what we do. It just provides a little tightening of the boundaries, a little focus on this is how we're going to operate as a board. And I think it's good. But I'm cautious to go against Carver's admonition not to adopt piecemeal. And so here I'm stuck, and I'd be interested in your comments on this. Commissioner Max Farrell.
I do agree that we do not, as a board, have that relationship with the county board at this particular time. And I would agree with your analysis that until we have that relationship, that working relationship, now might not be the best time to move forward with this. That's not to say I don't think that, boards should focus on what their role is. I do. But unless we have the backing of the county board as we move forward with this, I don't think it will work.
All right. Is there any construct under which we could use this governance policy? I personally don't see a big problem with adopting the governance policy, writing it into our bylaws, and stopping there until we can move forward on the other parts. But the law of unintended consequences is usually pretty powerful. I don't want to walk through that door and then find out that I didn't want to be here, and I've caused all these problems that I didn't see. So I feel a little bit paralyzed, afraid to move forward, but not wanting to move back. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I appreciate the work you've put into this, and it's been pretty extensive from what I can see. I'm relatively new to the board. Maybe we ought to just put it on the shelf for not a year, maybe 6 months or something like that, and see how we feel at some time period, 3 to 6 months from now. I just, after the meeting last night, I think we have a lot on our plate right now. And this is really fundamental, root level stuff. It wouldn't offend me just to take a pause on stuff like this for a little while. I don't know. If that, maybe that stops the momentum, and maybe that's the downside of.
I'm not terribly unhappy. I mean, having learned about the governance policy style, I am, it really helped focus me on the fact that it's important that as a commission we speak as one voice, and that the director doesn't really react to anything unless we have a motion, we pass a motion, and we direct him to do something. Of course, directing him to do something is sort of against the Carver model in general, but we're crawling, or we're trying to crawl. And I don't feel that we have, I guess I feel that the focus that reading the Carver book helped do that. Over the long term, we would need to codify that so that as the members change out and more members come to us with, didn't go through the Carver process, that ethos would be lost. So I don't see an immediate problem that has to be solved that this would solve. So I'm certainly willing to put it on the shelf for a bit and then regroup at a later time. But I don't want to discard the basic principles that he said, yet can't mandate and for instance, call a commissioner out of order for being, for directing the director to do something when it's not really a rule. So I don't want to abandon the policies. I'm not ready to institute rules. Yes?
I think there's a difference between directing the director to do something versus asking for information. So I just want to be clear on that. I do not think that it's, well, for instance, I'm going to ask something be put on the agenda for next month, and those are the pictures on your desk, and I will get pictures for you, Jason, as well. I've got a set for you for next month. But I don't want to direct the director on what I perceive as a problem. I want the board to direct the director if the board perceives it's a problem. That's not to say that I'm not going to ask for additional information for next month's meeting. So I just want to clarify that.
I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think that even Carver has a problem with that. Really, as opposed to telling him what to do. Do this, change your program this way, make this happen. So I see a clear distinction between what you're referring to and what I'm talking about. All right. Any other comments or discussion? All right. I don't feel a motion is necessary to simply set the Carver model stuff aside. Does anybody disagree with that?
No, we can just take no action
Right.
at this time.
All right. We'll take the action of taking no action. All right. Moving on to the next item then. 2011 American Legion Baseball Agreement. All right. All right. There's been a lot of things happening, and I would like to just talk through the agreement. You have the agreement there on your desk, and I would like to talk through the agreement and put a little history on this. After the Board of Commissioners voted to have the county abandon the baseball program and then to award it to the American Legion, we were contacted by Mark Reiner of the American Legion asking for a contract. And so in the interest of expediting that process, which was also a request of Mr. Greiner, and clearly we were in the same boat a year ago with needing to put together a program very quickly, Commissioner Doran, I, and Jason Jones got together and came up with some initial points. And the points were intended to be the beginning of a conversation with American Legion on a contract. We were not mandating points. We were laying down what we thought would be good terms for a contract, and to begin that conversation. There was some confusion over whether we were laying out a contract that was mandating. I think we worked that out last night at the meeting. And so this finally, on your desk, is the contract that has been written by Bob Cooney that encompasses the points that Commissioner Doran, myself, and Jason Jones came up with. It was agreed to verbally, only verbally, by the American Legion. They haven't formally approved this, although they now have this as of this morning to look at. And so I'll go through this, and it's our job as a commission to either approve, modify, or reject the contract. We would hopefully get American Legion's signature on, and then it would be in force. So the objective, that's straightforward. The premises are our fields, and the term was 1 year. On the recommendation of Bob Cooney, the county attorney, we recommended a 1-year term, not to limit the term, just to renew it every year. And a successful relationship going forward, we'll renew the agreement every year and make slight modifications as needed based on the needs of both parties. But we would look at this again in a year to ensure that our relationship is going well. American Legion's obligation, the first item was that the American Legion shall perform a nationwide background check of each head coach and assistant coach. We felt that this was an important standard that was common, really the standard across the country for youth programs. We wanted to ensure that this happened. I am unsure whether American Legion was doing this before. That's immaterial to me, and they seem to have no issue with it. Payment of fees, we simply laid out the agreement that the Board of Commissioners handed down. American Legion agrees to pay 1/2 the actual maintenance cost of the field to be determined by the Parks Department and billed at the end of the season. They'll notify us of the number of games simply for accuracy in billing, and then they'll pay us at the end of the year. American Legion shall appoint a qualified program manager, and they have done so and identified that person to us. An evaluation, we felt it would be a good conversation to have for American Legion to get the feedback from their players on how the season went. Also, as we talked about at the meeting last night, suggested as well by Mark Greiner. And they'll provide that evaluation to the Parks Director. Not that we're going to get in their chili on that, we'd just be interested to see how the program's going. Bill?
Are you taking comments at this point?
I'd be happy to take comments, yes.
Just, if it would help the American Legion, maybe they could use the same tool that Jason used, or an abbreviated version. I mean, if we can help in that process, to save some costs and to help them with the technology. You know, he did it all by email, my understanding is right?
Correct.
That might help them.
Absolutely.
All right.
And we've provided them with everything that we can provide them, to help them get their program started up again, and certainly the
So as
survey
we,
would be,
okay, as we execute this, maybe we'll make that offer.
that would be fine, yes.
Okay.
Conflict resolution plan, we just asked them to have some sort of process by which to handle complaints. We asked them to provide us with a full season schedule, which will help us scheduling the maintenance of the fields, preparation of the fields, putting the bases down, mowing the grass, all that kind of stuff. We asked them to have a telephone hotline to handle cancellations. Our primary objective here was to ensure that any time that it was cloudy or had rained a little bit or was raining on and off again, that Maryland didn't end up with 500 phone calls asking whether the games were on or not. It was simply about that. We've had difficulty with the program in the past as far as getting a lot of phone calls from American Legion parents on that, and we wanted to prevent that from happening. And then we were asking for a report at the end of the season on how many players were in the season. On our part, we have there the release of obligation for the 2009 debt, as we discussed last night, and this was ordered by the Board of Commissioners. We gave them our equipment, and we were going to ask for the equipment back if American Legion does not continue to run the program, but only up for the next 4 years. So after 4 years, there's no requirement for them to return the equipment. We'll make baseball fields available to them and keep them in good repair, and they can use the Civic Center meeting room as long as it's available at no cost. Howe Arena, they'll need to pay the fees on that one. We've laid down the requirement for $1 million in liability insurance with the county named as a additional insured, and then the rest of the stuff is really just the boilerplate contract stuff that lawyers enjoy so much. All right, that's just quickly the mindset behind having these the terms in the contract. Really just trying to make a successful season for the kids who are playing baseball. So I would entertain a motion to approve this contract as written.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, moved by Commissioner Carson, seconded by Commissioner Dorier to accept the American Legion baseball contract as presented. Discussion. Commissioner Max Power.
Well, as you know, I think that there are some items in the contract that are extremely, strict and unnecessary. A hotline for participants to call regarding cancellations, I think that's, that's fine. It's a nice service to do for the parents and for the players alike. I don't know that we require the Parks Director and the Secretary to be notified of cancellations. What happens if you can't get the Parks Director and the Secretary? It's items like this that I have a problem with. I just think this is much more restrictive than it needs to be. The term of 1 year, I understand that was Mr. Cooney's recommendation. I agree with some of the county board members who believe that the term should be longer than 1 year. It's my understanding that the American Legion originally asked for a 5-year agreement, and due to what happened to them last year, I can certainly understand why they'd like a little more reassurance that now that they're once again putting forth all this effort, that it's not going to be yanked out from under them again. For that reason, and only that reason, I would not support this particular contract. I just simply think that there are a lot of unnecessary restrictions in it.
Okay. My comment on notifying the Director and Secretary.
Why both?
Which paragraph is
Yeah, I'm
that?
not seeing that either.
Let's see, maybe I read it wrong.
I thought we
Let's see.
changed that.
Shall notify the Parks Director and Secretary of any cancellations. It's item G on what was on my desk.
Yeah, I
I mean, why both? So anyway.
Mine says just notify the Parks Department. Oh, and Secretary, you're right, excuse me.
Our objective in that was not to be restrictive, that there's a separate notification to the secretary and one to the director. I'm not opposed to changing that words to and/or. I thought, Jason, that we had discussed that, and maybe we missed that.
We discussed changing it to and instead of and/or. In the event I'm out of the office, or in the event Marilyn's out of the office, it's beneficial for both of us to have that. The other thing is, in order to reconcile billing properly at the end of the season, Marilyn will be coordinating that effort. So it's important that both her and I receive those notifications. They could notify us both in the same email. They could notify us both in the same phone call by speaking to both of us with one phone call. I don't think this is any additional stress on American Legion. And there are certain times that I have more of an ability to contact our facilities management department, or there are times that Marilyn has a better ability to contact our facilities management department to ensure that any dates that they anticipate not having games, that our staff does not go out and maintain those fields, thus keeping the costs low for American Legion. I think contacting both of us will ensure a more successful season at a lower rate for American Legion.
Commissioner Dorier.
Given the fact that we heard a pretty extensive explanation last night, and then given the second fact that the American Legion has verbally agreed to this, I'd say we just go ahead and do it. We've all committed to making this work, so I don't see any harm in just going ahead. There are going to be some details that aren't even anticipated in this thing that need to be worked out as we get going, and I think we'll work those out.
Okay. Commissioner Cass.
Does the American Legion, you mentioned this morning that they got the email, but do they have any knowledge of what's on this agreement, or is this the first time they're going to see any of this? Has anything verbally been spoken with them about this?
They've seen a list of the conditions, not in contract format, or the terms. Conditions is not the right word. A list of the terms. They looked that over, gave us their verbal. We put those terms into the contract, and they've just seen the wording of the contract. Now that's a new thing for them.
So there were no red flags as far as them verbally stating that they didn't like this or didn't like that?
No, and the original giving them the terms was for a conversation, to begin the conversation, and they said, yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I agree with Bill on that. I think we move forward on it. I mean, if they haven't brought up any extreme, concerns about the contract, then I like Jason's description on why, they can easily, the secretary and the director can easily be contacted via email. I mean, so.
Okay, Commissioner Carstens?
Just, my understanding of notification is they can leave the message on your phone when you're not there, correct?
There's no reason they couldn't.
Yeah, and so, as long as the phone's operating, I don't see any problem. And, because he's not in the office, doesn't mean they can't leave that notification. So I don't see any problem.
So they'd have to
Initially,
leave one message or two messages?
Pardon?
They'd have to leave one message or two? One with each?
Well, some,
That's
I think
ridiculous.
that they usually refer, when I call, they usually refer me to who I asked for and leave a message on that particular person. So if I ask for Marilyn, then I'll leave a message for her, or if I ask for Jason. I imagine you could just tell the person who answers the phone that you want them both to have that message, if they aren't, either one of them isn't available. And if you got just one of them, then you could, if it was just Marilyn was there, you could ask her to relay the message to Jason. I would say, I don't know. Anyway,
Okay.
it's no big deal.
Commissioner Dorier?
Just a question. Are you anticipating that you and Mark Reiner are going to be in the same room and sign this thing at the same time?
Hadn't thought about the mechanics of how that would happen. Can be.
Okay. Things like that can be worked out
Yeah,
at a time like that.
to me, the intent of these kind of details,
You talk about nitpicking.
that's not the thing under which this contract would go into default. Police coming to stop games, and that would be the kind of stuff that would cause this contract not to go forward. All right, any further discussion? All right, the motion on the table is to approve the American Legion Junior Baseball contract as presented. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, a roll call vote. Marilyn, please.
Bob Karstens,
Yes.
Bill Dorier,
Yes.
Al Larson,
Yes.
Rebecca Cass,
Yes.
Chris Maxbauer,
No.
and Dave Taylor.
No.
All right, motion carries. All right, next item is new business, ADA pool lift. Kim?
Yeah, in December, late December, the lift arm on our pool lift bent, and so we've been without a pool lift since then. I've been working with Paul Johnson with Facilities on getting that one repaired, and you can see in my explanation here that it's going to cost around $1,000 to repair the lift arm. It's something that we have already replaced 3 other times in the past. And as we got looking into it further, we have found that the current pool lift that we have does not make us ADA compliant. And as with the Virginia Graham Baker pool drain covers that we had to install a couple years ago, the lifts are kind of the next thing that the government is looking for to make sure that all facilities are in compliance with this. They are giving all public swimming pools to the date of March 15th, 2012 to go ahead and fix their pool lifts. How it affects Eastling Pool is that the new lift needs to be 400 pounds, or to hold 400 pounds. The one that we have currently holds up to 250. I've been working with, I found a lift that I liked, that I thought would go really well in our facility. I've been working with facilities to make sure that all of the, not really adaptations that we would need, but it's a water-powered lift. So we wouldn't have to worry about batteries or charging batteries, and they get knocked off the charger by the custodial staff when they move the cart or anything like that. One concern that Jason and I had was dragging a hose across the deck, and those kinds of things. So I've been working with facilities to work out some of those little kinks. And then I'm just waiting for a final call back actually from OP Aquatics. I sent her an email late this afternoon, just making sure that that lift will really work with the way our gutter system is in the pool. I don't know if any of you took the time to kind of look it up online and see what it is, but it's kind of, in some of the viewings that I saw, it was very close to pools as far as the edge of the pool. But I have seen it used in other facilities with the deck level gutter. So the gutter comes right up to the edge of the lip of the deck. And so I'm talking with OP Aquatics because they came in with the lowest bid, just to see if, yes, this lift will really work with that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, but I just wanted you guys to see where we're at in that process, and looking if you guys have any comments or suggestions for it.
I have a number of questions. Can you educate me on the current lift that we have? Do we, in the times that I've been there, I've never seen anyone use the lift. They're common in many of the pools I've swum in. They sit there oftentimes permanently by the side, but I didn't even know that we had a lift like this. How often is it used? And the second question is, why does it keep breaking?
Our lift gets used several times a week, specifically with the TBA programs that come and use the pool. And since January, it broke right before Christmas break. So since January, they've had several students that they haven't been able to to get them into the pool because we don't have an operating lift. The one that I'm looking at and the one that we have is not one that you permanently mount. It kind of rolls away and we tuck it away in a closet when it's not being used. But if anyone at any time wanted to use it, the staff can set it up and get it going. We're not super sure. Paul Johnson and I have a couple theories on why the one that we have keeps breaking. But we don't have a definitive answer on what that reason is.
I have a question.
Commissioner Maxwell.
If the one we have, I mean, how often is the one that we have used? Our president, I've never seen it used. How often?
We have TBA groups that come in Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for 2 hours at a time.
Okay, so you use it for that group?
Yeah,
on a regular
but
basis.
really, any public citizen that
Oh,
maybe was in a
certainly.
wheelchair or whatever
Absolutely.
needed to use it, they could come and ask us and we would
And
put it
so
in.
so the repeated use is based, I mean, it's old, and so that's what's causing it to break.
I don't know.
Who knows? Okay.
It might not have been the right lift for our pool.
You're not
It might
wearing
have
your
been
mechanic hat.
operator
I got it.
error. There's all kinds of what ifs. The one that we have now, it has an arm that kind of swings and drops. This lift is a seat that you sit on, and the person who's using it can actually operate it on their own. You don't need additional staff like we do for our current lift. So they just have a little lever and it turns them and lowers them, and then same thing to get back up out of the water.
Okay, and Danny Brown approves this, the facilities department approves this particular
I'm not
lift?
totally there yet. Danny and I
Okay.
sat down last week.
So you're
He
not
looked-
asking for our approval tonight?
Not at this
All
time.
right.
I'm just showing you where we're at because probably next month I'm going to come to you.
And when you do, would you let us know what budget line item this is going to come out of?
Correct, right.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dorier?
I withdraw my raised hand.
All right, so the way ahead then, for you, the process ahead is what?
I'm waiting for the vendor to come back to me and say 100% absolutely, you won't have to make any modifications, that this lift will work as is. Some concerns about having to make modifications might null our warranty, and so that's not the direction we're looking to go. So I want to make sure that it will definitely work for our pool. And then I'll talk to Danny Brown and definitely make sure that goes. They've actually already, we found a water faucet on the, or not faucet, spigot on the pool deck, and it was capped off. And Facilities has already come in and uncapped it. It's in the corner where we would use it, so the hose that would go across would be, just very minimally in front of the bleachers there on that shallow end. It won't have to come all the way around the pool deck or anything like that, so.
Just to clarify, what's the total expenditure? Is it $41,5380? Is that the,
Well, the lowest bid came in from OP Aquatics, and they came in at $3,490.60.
and is that the one you're looking at?
That is the one I'm looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Educate me on the role that Facilities plays in the approval process or the acquisition process for this?
Just to make sure that they can get the anchor bolts in, and one thing I was working on was to make sure that we did have a water source to run the water-powered lift.
So coordination, not approval?
Correct.
Okay, and Jason, can you educate me on the budget process for how you add things like this and when they were unplanned?
This is something we're going to have to be somewhat creative with. It's going to depend on whether or not this unit, the one from OP Aquatics, it'll depend on if that's the one that we decide to go with. If there's another model that we have to go with, we may have to go back to the drawing board on this. More than likely, an expenditure of approximately $3,500 may have to come actually from our fund balance. We'll have to look at some of our other budget line items, some of our larger line items within the pool. But to cover an expense of this magnitude, I don't think we're going to be able to pull line item budgets. So it's something we may have to look to our fund balance for.
Okay. Great, thank you. All right. Next item then is the joint meeting follow-up. I really have just 3 action items from the meeting last night. 2 of them are really the same. The first one was a suggestion, I think, by, well, I don't have my notes on who made the suggestion, but I thought it was a good one, and that was the potential to amend paragraph 10 of the rules and regulations that would require a joint meeting if the Board of Commissioners wants to revisit a decision that we have made. I thought it was a good idea that would, I guess, force a communication between the 2 bodies to ensure that all the facts were put on the table and voices were heard. Any comments or discussion on that? Mr. Max Bauer.
I would not necessarily be, I guess I'm somewhat, I see pluses and minuses to this, and I see it, please understand, from a commissioner's standpoint. The county board recently reversed a decision that the EDC board made. The county board has also reversed decisions that the Commission on Aging board has made. And the downside for me is, you know, if we do it for one board in the rules, then we probably should do it for all the boards in the rules. And but the plus side is, you know, there is more open communication, which I think is good. My preference is, in the spirit of open communication, to have an annual meeting with the county board, but to actually require one if a decision is reversed or I mean, is that meeting going to take place after we vote? Because, you know, by Open Meetings Act, we're not necessarily allowed to speak with each other on issues. You know, we're limited. So we do not always know how a vote is going to turn out. Well, we don't ever know how a vote is going to turn out until a vote is taken. So I'm unclear how this is going to work. The downside, as I said, you know, if we do it with one board, perhaps we should do it with all. And I would rather see an annual meeting, much like we have with the Commission on Aging Board. And I will say that the Commission on Aging Board did not meet with the county board this year, but that was because the Commission on Aging Board was working so diligently, I should say, and with a great deal of dedication to pass not only, they didn't meet with them last year, because we wanted to pass the Commission on Aging millage, and we also wanted to pass the senior center millage. We really felt that that was where our concentration needed to be, and we did have the county board support in that endeavor, and they understood why, you know, we had time constraints. So that's it.
The construct that was suggested last night, I didn't think was a good one. I thought that the construct that I would envision would be, paragraph 10 says that if the Board of Commissioners wants to revisit a decision that 3 commissioners submit in writing a request to do so, and then it's put on the agenda for the next meeting. To me, after the 3 commissioners submitted a desire to revisit that decision, that would trigger the need for a joint meeting. At which time, or maybe not even a joint meeting, maybe a special meeting of the Board of Commissioners at which we are required to be in attendance. It's not our meeting, it's a Board of Commissioners meeting. They have the meeting, we all exchange information and facts, and then they can vote on the issue, or something to that effect, or take it under advisement and then vote at their next meeting, something like that. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have to have a rule like that because the Board of Commissioners would solicit information and opposing viewpoints. Whether the American Legion baseball issue was an isolated incident, I don't know that answer. I don't have a lot of trust right now that we solved all the problems last night at the meeting. I don't know yet. That will be seen over time. Maybe it did work problems out, and we will be included in the discussions next time, or maybe not. I don't know. I can see that it would be onerous to have the board have a meeting every single time disagreed with the decision, but to me, it's also good governance. The conversation should happen before flipping something that we spent a lot of time and effort on.
Oh, okay.
Any other comments?
Just, I agree totally with what you just said in terms of what should trigger it. So, Mr. Turner.
I was a little out of order then in discussing before. Would there be anyone willing to make a motion to draft language to amend paragraph 10? Commissioner Dorier.
I don't think the timing's right for that. I think we ought to let that sit for a little while and see how things go. I agree with your idea. I agree with it, that down the road, that might be the way to go. But I think we need to get a little accomplishment under our belt here first.
Okay.
If you want to put a motion forward, we can do that. I'm just trying to think strategically.
Understand. Commissioner Cass.
Just being new to the board, I was just shocked last night that there wasn't a mandatory annual meeting between the boards. I think it's so critical. I mean, what Herb Lempool said last night to you, he appreciated all the work that this board does, and he didn't know. And I think that it's on the table. It should be addressed right now. It's in front of us, and I think it's very important. We talked about communication a lot last night, and that's where you communicate.
Okay. Anyone else?
Well, I'll make a motion that we have an annual meeting with the Board of Commissioners.
I'll support that.
All right. It's been moved and seconded to have an annual meeting with the Board of Commissioners. Discussion. I'll throw in some discussion. I'm sorry, Mr. Carson's going.
Well, just, the value of an annual meeting, if it can't address the question of them honoring our work by consulting with us before they nullify an action that we've done, I mean, what's the point of having the meeting if we can't have a meeting before they wipe out our efforts?
The value in the meeting is that we establish a better relationship and a better history of communication, and so that it isn't so, there are not those artificial barriers to the conversation, which clearly were occurring in this American Legion baseball issue. So the more we talk, then the more we talk. The more comfortable we get with each other, the more likely one or the other is to pick up the phone and say, we got an issue here we need to talk about, and then we can convene a special meeting to do that, and it happens without being mandated by the rules. That would be the value of an annual meeting. Likewise, my opinion on the meeting last night was, while there wasn't much interest from the Board of Commission in my long speech on the value of Park and Rec, they were highly interested in the strategic plan stuff that they didn't know about, and so shooting around in the dark to try to figure out which were the right targets. That seemed to have some value to them on, oh, gosh, this is what you guys are doing. That's good to know. By keeping that conversation going, I think it does have some value and hopefully would avert a situation like that in the future. If you want, I can flip sides and argue the other side now. Commissioner Dorier.
I think we're talking about two different things here. One is to force a meeting when there's a disagreement, and the other one is for a regular annual meeting. The motion on the table right now is for a regular annual meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Let's vote.
Okay. Any other discussion? I do have other discussion on that. Also suggested were a joint meeting prior to their budget process, or their hammering out the budget. And there is some value in that. I think previously, Jason, you go up and defend your budget? Is that how that works?
Prior to the 2011 budget, Parks and Recreation Commission had zero involvement with the budgeting process for the year. For the 2011 budget, this board wanted to be more involved, so we had our first budget hearing in front of this board. I presented it to our commission first, for the first time this past summer. And then after this commission said, yep, we're all right with scenario number 3 is what you guys decided, then I went on to defend that to the Board of Commissioners.
Okay.
Correct.
Commissioner Carsons, do you have a comment? Okay. The other joint meeting that was proposed last night was in the fall after the conclusion of the baseball season to, I guess, to recap or to talk about what's going to happen moving forward.
And our annual meeting could be set up at that time of year.
It could be, and I was...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Say that again?
He said our annual meeting could be set up for that time of year.
Right.
There are a number of times that we could do it, because I was beginning to think about, well, when is the best time to do it? And in this case, early in the year makes sense, because there are often new commissioners on this body and new commissioners on that body that could use some education and some face-to-face. Likewise, at the end of the year, looking back on, what has happened and where do we want to go, I see value in both of it. Commissioner McIntyre.
I don't know the answer to this question. I've never played the game. When does baseball season end?
Baseball season ends, last year, we ended the baseball season on July 30th to July 30th.
Okay.
Is that all baseball?
We,
For our program.
we as a commission will probably meet sometime, I don't know, September, to talk about next year's budget. After we get our budget set, why couldn't we arrange to, it'll be after the baseball season, and, unless you want to have separate meetings, unless you think they're two separate topics, but, well, of course they are, but we could actually evaluate baseball and, at the same time, talk about our budget to the county board if we do it in the fall.
Okay. Commissioner Dwyer?
Baseball could, just another way to look at this would be to, after the season concludes, is to just go to a regular Board of Commissions meeting, or either a full meeting or one of their subcommittees. They meet as a body of the whole, or whatever they call that, every week, and make a report on baseball, and let them ask questions. Some of the, Jason could give the report, and some of the board could attend with him.
Or all the board?
Or all the board, whatever, yeah, and get on their agenda. That way, you don't have to call a special meeting.
Okay.
For a single topic like that.
I agree.
Okay.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. The motion on the table right now is a general motion that is to have an annual joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners. Is that correct?
Yes.
I just want to clarify, is that something that we're talking about changing the rules and regulations of this commission, or is this something we're just?
No.
Okay.
No. This
No.
would be more like annually we'll request a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, that's all it is. And then we can continue our discussions about when we're going to do that at a later date. All right. So the motion on the table is to conduct annually a joint meeting with the County Board of Commissioners and the Parks and Rec Commission. Is that clear enough, Marilyn?
Yes.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Are we still on number 2? Because I do have a,
Yes. Go ahead.
okay. One of the things that I heard last night from this commission is, and I did appreciate it, is that we are, and I heard you say it tonight, we are going to be providing American Legion everything that we can to help them. Jason, have we given the names of last year's participants to the American Legion yet?
No, we haven't. They haven't requested it.
They have not requested it?
Correct.
Because I heard from one of the American Legion board members today that they have requested it and they haven't gotten it. So I will, and I'll tell you who it was. It was Ralph Soffordini. I will make a phone call tomorrow and ask them.
I don't believe that we've gotten any requests for
Okay.
that. My point of contact with American Legion Baseball is either Mark Greiner or Neil Horning. So
Okay.
I can check my records. I don't believe that's the case. I don't know.
No, I believe you. I just will make it,
and
I will make it a point to call Commissioner
And that's fine.
Soffordini tomorrow.
I
and
don't know how appropriate
let
it
him
is
know.
for us to share names, contact information for people that have signed up for any of our programs. We've never done this with the swimming pool. Sharing that information with another party is not something we've ever done in the past, and that might be an unusual precedent for us to set in this case. While I'm a firm believer in helping out American Legion, handing out the contact information for 550 kids, I'm a little bit leery about.
Brings to mind another question. The people that are putting on the coaches clinic, how are they? Are they just going to the schools and advertising? We're not assisting them in it?
We're sending that out. We're doing work for them, and that's one of the reasons we're taking 30% of that revenue, is to do that footwork for them.
You mean coaches clinic, or did you mean skills clinic?
Well, the skills clinic, I'm sorry. I meant skills clinic.
That's-
I know zero about baseball. I barely recognize a baseball bat when I see one.
And that's part of the reason we're taking that 30% revenue of that program. We're not taking that 30% revenue of baseball.
So if American
We're doing
Legion,
it for them.
so if American Legion pays you, you'll send out notices, but
Mr. Chairman.
I don't understand it. Okay.
Commissioner Dorier?
Yeah, maybe the thing to do would be, we haven't even signed this agreement yet. When it's signed and when it's finalized, it might be appropriate for the Parks and Recreation Department to use your email list and send an email to all of last year's participants explaining that this year, the program will be run by American Legion, and give them a phone number to contact.
There you go.
That would solve the problem.
Okay. Commissioner Cass?
Doesn't the American Legion have their own data? I mean, if they run they don't have any of the old.
I'm thinking they do, but.
I mean, it seems like if you're running a business, that would be pretty key to keep and not rely on the Civic Center to keep that information.
I would assume they had kept their stuff and they didn't just trash it all after 2009, but if they haven't requested it, then I would assume they haven't requested it for a reason, and that is because they already have the information. Jason?
We did not receive any information from them last year. I don't know that they may have had records, but it was something we didn't have access to. One of their former board members is in the audience. If you guys would like to ask that same question.
Yeah.
I think we're getting way down into detail here that kind of goes against the Carver policy, to be honest with you.
All right. All right, well, it was a question and item up for discussion, so got a motion right now. All right, anything else on the follow-up for the joint meeting last night?
You said you had three things. I've got the amendment to number 10, and then the second item was the idea of an annual meeting. What's the
They
third?
proposed a joint meeting prior to the budget process,
Oh, that's right.
and then the third item was a joint meeting after the baseball process.
Okay.
We've had our motion on that, and we've arrived at our conclusion on how to resolve those three issues. So that was all I had.
Okay.
All right, T-Bays North Star Field Use Agreement. Is that you, Jason?
It is. I was hoping that Jennifer Jorgensen would be here to help discuss this. Based on our lease with T-Bays, for them to have a signed agreement with North Star, another soccer organization here in the community, it has to go through approval by T-Bays, by North Star, and by Parks and Recreation Commission. Within your packets, I've included emails from both Jennifer Jorgensen as well as Coach Furstenberg, the executive or the director of North Star Soccer, and both parties are in agreement with this. This is very similar to agreement to what they've had in the past. with the exception of increased expenses associated with fertilizer. Because both T-Bays, and in your packet you have information showing T-Bays is in agreement with this, as well as North Star, I would recommend to the board that we move forward with approving this agreement.
All right. Can I have a motion then to approve the agreements?
So moved.
Support.
All right, it's been moved and supported to approve the field use agreements between T-Bays and North Star as submitted. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, NER and consumer electric line easement.
We were approached by the Conservation, Grand Traverse Conservation District to discuss and approve a consumer electric line easement within the Nature Education Reserve. I've asked Ben Purdy and Bob Glashewski to come in and answer any questions and talk more about this easement. I'm not sure the other gentleman's name.
Jim Fortino. Jim Fortino.
All right, great.
If all of you sign that on the sign-in sheet?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Shall I start?
Go ahead.
Right. Consumers Energy has asked for a small length of easement to tap an existing transmission line that runs on the Natural Education Reserve property. It would cross county property for approximately 85 feet. And I've talked it over with the Natural Education Reserve Advisory Committee. Their next meeting isn't until April 19th, and we have several members that are out of state during this time of year. So the entire committee has not seen the full proposal from Consumers Energy, but in talking with the members individually, and most of the members have seen it, they did not raise any major concerns other than that they would like to see some language in the easement that states it could be used as a trail corridor in the future if it's ever appropriate, and that any money that comes from the easement could be put back into the parkland for trail improvements. And so, with those two considerations, it has their support and our support as property managers from the Conservation District.
I'm a little bit confused by that. So you would like, you're recommending approval as submitted, or you're recommending approval with amendments to the agreement?
This, I believe, is just a sample agreement.
This is a sample. I totally missed that. Okay.
And so we would recommend approval with some amendments, or with that type of language included in the agreement, the easement.
Okay. And who would draw that up? Does that come from you, or do you request that from them and then they make it happen?
Typically, we draw it up and then submit it for your approval or changes or whatever. So, yeah, we would take a typical one and then add whatever language that you want.
Okay.
I'm confused then with the sample, but there's a page in our package here that's agenda item H4 that describes the size of the easement as 100 by 80, and the payment is $2,000. Are those real terms? Okay. Okay.
All right, so in our packet is the actual easement that they're requesting.
Yes.
And
We should have a survey and a copy of the
okay. And what would be forthcoming would be a contract then, which would lay out the exchange of money and then the other terms that you've suggested still
Yep, whatever,
forthcoming.
yeah, with the trails, yep. There'll be some things that, I mean, you couldn't build a structure underneath the
Right.
lines, but as far as a bike or a foot trail, there's really no issue. Motorized, I don't think that's what you want anyways, but that would be an issue to put
That would be
a road on.
inconsistent with
Right,
the
exactly,
management of the
right. But
property.
yeah, there's no problem using it as a trail.
And there are other power line easements throughout this property, is that correct?
Correct.
How does $2,000 stack up as a payment? Is that average? Is that for something this size? Is that a,
Pretty much with a guy anchor, the pole that they're gonna put up. The pole will be, it's a wooden line pole. Metsi, the company, which is ITC, owns this line now. They would construct a silver steel pole in the middle of the easement. And that's how they operate, and we need to tap the line to get to our substation. And they control that line now, even though we owned this property once, and we conveyed it to you.
Thank you.
Back in the 60s,
And the line we had, but when we split up, they got this particular transmission line.
okay.
It's interesting, back in the 60s, we sold it to the county for $1.
Yeah.
All along the Boardman corridor.
You know, you sold us the dams for $1. You wanted to...
That was part of it too, yes it was. But it says to preserve as recreation land, and that's what the county has done, so.
Okay.
Historically, the commission has looked favorably upon easements that are for the greater good of the community, and that is the case with this easement. It's something that we've typically said, the commission would typically say they agree with this. And then we have Bob Cooney review review the language in the easement before a final signing off by the Parks and Recreation Commission chairperson.
All right, so no action is required tonight. This is informative of what you are requesting.
Okay.
And all three of you represent Consumers Electric? Is that?
No, I'm sorry, I work for the Grand Traverse Conservation District and provide support to the Natural Education Reserve Advisory Committee, and we manage the Natural Education Reserve on behalf of the county. I should state also that the advisory committee was concerned with loss of habitat or, deteriorating the ecosystem out there, and I think there's some pictures in your packet. You could see that most of the property that would be crossed is within an existing power line easement, and there would be very, very minimal disturbance to any sort of high-quality wildlife habitat there, so.
So their concerns have been solved?
I believe so, yes, and so we're just bringing it to this body tonight to see if any of you have concerns or would like to see additional language put into the
So there were no
easement.
concerns on their behalf?
They were concerned with wildlife.
Yeah, but that was all, they were fine with all of it? They didn't have any,
He's not sure, I think is what I heard him say.
okay.
From all they have not gathered as a group and put forth a motion of support, but from all the individual members that I've spoken with, their concerns have been satisfied or met.
Ben, is the easement we're talking about here, that's intersecting another easement?
That's correct.
So a lot of the clearing has already been, a good portion of this clearing has already been done where it intersects the other easement?
That's correct. There'd be very little loss of any trees or anything like that. It's already a managed easement.
All right, any further questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next item is the aquatic report. Kim?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight a couple things out of the aquatic report. The first paragraph is the happy one that the staff and I are doing our little happy dance with. The numbers from the 2010 winter session were 160 swimmers. The numbers for 2011 thus far, we go through spring break because we include our spring break classes in these numbers. But they, at the time of print for this, they were at 283, which is a 77% increase. So next time you're at the pool, congratulate the staff because they have worked really hard, and I'm very proud of them for that. Also, letters have hit the mail for people or businesses to help with the underwater egg hunt. We're not just looking for cash donations. I've been working with Safe Kids North Shore, and we've secured, I just got an email from it yesterday, that we've got a $400 grant to help with that event, and I'm waiting to hear back from the Walmart Foundation to see if we will get a grant for that. But what we're looking for is local businesses to come in, kind of promote their healthy lifestyle, whatever it is, if it's cycling, if it's, you know, outdoor sports, whatever it is, come up with some kind of a fun carnival game. They can advertise their business, they can, and then they're there to help entertain our carnival area. The Power Squadron is going to participate in this. We've got them secured, and they're bringing a bounce house. So it should be pretty fun in our carnival arena area this year. So if you know of any businesses that might, or organizations, service organizations, that would be willing to kind of help come and put on a carnival booth, we would love to have them. It doesn't cost them any money. Really, they're kind of, you know, helping us out while we help them out, so we don't charge them any money for these booths. And I think Nancy could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but the swim team, some of the swimmers are going to come again and help out in the water portion. And I think,
An email went out to everybody on the team.
yeah, and I think maybe they're looking at doing a booth. I think.
The email has gone out, but we haven't had our board meeting.
Okay. Okay. The other thing that was kind of fun and exciting, we have advertised Aqua Camp just in our winter program guide about 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. I sent out an email to our promo email list that we have at the pool, and I said, hey, don't forget about spring break. If you're going to be in town, we've got, you know, these number of activities. Our Aqua Camp had 0 people enrolled for it. 2 hours later, we had 9. So we've gone ahead, we've expanded, we had capped Aqua Camp at 12, we've expanded it to 15, and we've opened a morning session one as well. So hopefully that will meet the needs of the community a little better. I know last year it was pretty tough to get into it. Schools have just received flyers this week, and I got a call yesterday that somebody had already come home with theirs. And they wanted to know, was there still space? I couldn't get in last year. We really want to do it. So I anticipate both of those to fill. Also, Special Olympics is looking for someone to come and be a starter at their swim meet on April 8th. So if anyone knows of anyone that would be interested in doing that, please have them contact me. I have contacted the head coach of the swim team, but I haven't heard a final if they had anyone interested or able to do it or not. The last thing is, we did February, we had another Flick and Float, and our open swim on average on Friday nights is about 10 to 12 participants. February's Flick and Float that was done on the Friday night open swim brought in 47 swimmers. So that's another new fun program that people seem to be enjoying, and the staff is having fun with some of this new fun stuff as well. So
what do you attribute the dramatic increase in swimming lesson participation?
I think some of it is the community events that we're doing. I know during the trunk or treat, a lot of people were coming in and they were picking up schedules and program guides, and I didn't even know there was a pool back here. I think some of it too, we had 10 weeks of our winter session, and I split those Saturday, Sunday, and Friday afternoon classes into 2 sessions, so they did 2 5-week class times, and the weekends are where we see our bigger numbers, and so I think that has a lot to do with it. I think customer service and the staff has changed, and so we're seeing a lot more return people. We did have more scholarship people enrolled. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was somewhere in the 20s, which, that had only been like 6 or 7 students in that. So there's a lot of factors that I think contributed to that.
Okay, very good.
Who's come up with all these fun ideas? You?
Yeah.
No, it's great. I mean, because I know I talked with a couple people in the past as far as like going to other centers and finding out what they're doing to get, gather program ideas, because it's such a, I was just wondering if you maybe got it from another place or if you created it or if it was up brainstorming or.
I've only been here about a year and a half.
Yeah.
I come from the largest park and rec district in the state of Oregon. And so some of these were things that we did there. The trunk or treat was totally just kind of my thing. That's something that my last park and rec district wasn't doing. It was, we got here in October and I said, oh my gosh, I don't even know what the good neighborhood is to trick or treat in or anything. And so that got me brainstorming the trunk or treat program that we did. But
And real quick, with that carnival, where's the booth and the jump thing? Where is that gonna
it'll all be
set
set up in the arena.
In the Howe Arena, okay.
Right, so we used because last year we had 137 children registered. I know that there were some more that had trickled in and participated in the event as well, but they're all wristbanded, and we send them down to the pool area in groups, because obviously we can't have 137 children and their families in the water searching for eggs at the same time. So what we do is we keep them busy in the arena area with the carnival, and when they come in, they get braceleted as far as color groups. So we'll say, okay, everyone with an orange wristband, you follow the Easter Bunny, and the Easter Bunny leads you down to the pool area. But so you get your wristband, and we gave them a passport to each of the carnival booths. We have secured we've gotten 2 donations from Great Wolf Lodge, and they're each 4-pass water park passes. So this year at the end, everyone that has completed their passport, they're going to turn it in for a raffle, and we're going to have some raffle prizes for them to get too.
Will they swim too then, or no, it's not even swimming at all?
They've got, last year we did it, they had 30 minutes to hunt for their eggs and kind of splash around a little bit as well, but it's not really an open swim.
Okay.
We got to set it up and sink the eggs back down in the pool for the next group.
Thank you. Jason, Director's report.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the strategic plan, work plan update, but we have submitted a grant application to Rotary Charities to complete the needs analysis for Parks and Recreation services in the community. We're just waiting to hear back in regards to that, or how we fared with that grant process. We expect an answer any day. I've also started researching some of the business plans for parks, and then very preliminary research. I've tried focusing on Oakland County and looking at some of their parks and talking with some of their staff members, people I'm familiar with. And one of the challenges just with Oakland County, and as I said, this is very preliminary, a lot of their parks are taken up by other active facilities like golf courses. They have 4 different golf courses within their community. But they've done a good job with their business plans, but they pertain specifically to the golf courses. There's still a lot of research to be done there, but I wanted to let the commission know I've started that. The next item, lease agreements for users. This is kind of an interesting topic. At the Resource Management Administration Committee meeting on the 9th of this month, there was a pretty hefty discussion, and there was some discussion last night in our joint meeting about different user groups, some user groups having user agreements and some not. And there's been talk of having every group have a user agreement. And initially I'm all right with that and saying, yeah, we need to have more formality within our parks and recreation system. But looking at some of the user groups, I don't know that having a cookie cutter user agreement for every facility and every group that we have is the appropriate way to handle this. Right now we have user agreements, we have long-term user agreements with T-Bays, with ICE, and we're sitting down to discuss an agreement with American Legion. One of the big differences between T-Bays and ICE versus any of our other user groups is T-Bays and ICE manage the facilities that they use that are owned by Grand Traverse County Parks and Recreation. So it is a little bit different. They utilize, or in maintaining those facilities, it prevents our facilities crew, prevents our facilities crew from spending any time doing maintenance to that. It prevents our Parks and Recreation staff from programming those facilities, and it really minimizes the risk as much as possible for the activities that go on in those facilities. So I look at the T-Bays and the ICE agreements as a little bit different than the YMCA or, let's say, Breakers. The facilities that YMCA softball uses, the facilities that Breakers uses, the facilities that rugby uses, those are all facilities that we maintain. They pay a fee to us for availability and exclusive use at those times of those facilities. So I see a differentiation there between ICE and T-Bays. With American Legion, it's been unusual. Our agreement with them that started in 1957 said that they had exclusive use of, I don't recall if it said exclusive or primary, but they had predominant use of the fields at the Civic Center. We would continue maintaining those, but the agreement from 1957 has been voided at this point. Another consideration, or another thing to take into consideration is how intensive do we get with these user agreements? Do we want to do a user agreement for every group that rents a pavilion? And do we have to have that user agreement come in front of this board to be approved? I would hope not. But to move forward with a cookie cutter, everybody has to have a user agreement, I think is while I agree with it in theory, I don't think it's beneficial for positive customer service, and I think it's a very heavy burden on staff, a very heavy burden on this commission. I think there needs to be some exploration about how best to handle this and what type of policy to put together to make it more formal without making it so rigid, thank you, that it jeopardizes customer service or it jeopardizes flexibility with some of our facilities that we benefit from being flexible with. So I'm interested in any comments or any input from the commission.
Yeah, I think we all realize, particularly after last night, that any kind of an agreement that we're talking about is a legal issue. I would suggest that over time, it's no big emergency, but I would suggest that Jason work with Mr. Cooney and first talk about about the broad spectrum, all the different types of users we have and facilities and maintenance agreements and all these variables, and that they come up with a few different, and I don't know how many, but a few proposed agreements. I do think we need to have some uniformity, particularly within some categories that we come up with. But it's a legal issue, and I think we need to lean on our, it's lucky we have a free attorney. I think we need to lean on him and come up with some scheme so that there is some uniformity.
I agree with Bill. I mean, a contract can be even as simple as a one page. I mean, you sign a contract to get a hotel room, you just sign a little rules and regulations and amount, and I mean, you could make it somewhat simple, that it wouldn't be an overburden of paperwork or.
I'd like to hear first how Bob Cooney sees this issue and the different categories that he would come up with.
Okay.
Is that, could we make that suggestion? As a board, suggest that Jason contact him and see if that's a feasible approach?
I think we can. My hesitation is simply I don't have my mind wrapped around the different categories, because clearly someone renting a pavilion, or not renting a pavilion, reserving a pavilion, is different than the group that comes and plays rugby 3 or 4 times a year, which is different from the YMCA, which comes and plays, say, 100 softball games a season, which is different than the American Legion playing 400 baseball games during the season. It's all different, yet there are similarities that run through each of these.
Real quick, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
When a business or a league decides to come rent space, I mean, obviously money's exchanged. What's in the, do they get a receipt, or, what's the?
It depends on how they come in. For instance, if someone comes in and they say, I guess, camping on Power Island is a good example. On occasion, we'll get people that come in and they want to use, for instance, I have a permit here from someone that's renting all five sites for Power Island for, it looks like, 3 days. And what they do is they've contacted us right after, in January every year, and they say, hey, we want to rent the Power Island, we want to rent all the campsites for these specific days. So what we're able to do with them is we're able to email them a temporary permit. And that temporary permit lists all of the rules, all of the regulations associated with what's going on Power Island. Once they pay that registration fee, once they get that permit, they pay the registration fee, then they get a receipt from us. We do have the flexibility to change the format of something like this in the event someone calls us in advance and says, hey, we want to make a reservation for that facility. We also have the opportunity for people that may paddle out to Power Island and see that there's a campsite open that say, hey, would like to camp for the night. Fred Tank then drives his gator out there and he takes their money, and we have an exchange like that out on the island. So there are a variety of different ways to do this, and our methodology is different based on each of the individual users, depending on their flexibility. If someone comes into our office and says, hey, I want to rent the baseball field right now, can you guys chalk it up for me and get it game ready? If it's open, we'd be happy to do that if we have facilities, if we have the proper personnel on staff. We wouldn't necessarily move towards an agreement with them. So how we've done things in the past has been dependent on how the customer asks us for that information. What type of things are they looking for? Are they looking for us to hold those baseball fields? Somebody pops in and says, hey, we want you to hold baseball fields for the next 4 Saturdays for us. Then that becomes a different agreement.
What if, it sounds like you're doing that with the Power Island, with the rules and regulations, just hand them that, if somebody comes in just to rent an hour on the field, hand them that and say, we need you to read it if you want, or don't read it, but sign it right here, just so you have something, so that they, at least, and it could be, something as simple as that you.
And that's something we have capability of doing within our registration software. And that's, I guess, where one of the questions I would have is what's going to differentiate, and this is something we need to figure out, what differentiates having a user agreement versus having a reservation system through our registration software.
Yeah.
There are a variety of different ways to manage this. It's just the intent of the Parks and Recreation Commission to do something like this, the intent of the Board of Commissioners, and saying we need user agreements. It's going to be interesting where we draw the line on this project.
Commissioner Max Power.
Well, I said pretty much everything. I'm just at RMNA and last night, and I'm going to reiterate what I said last night and at RMNA. We are treating American Legion different. Please explain to me why we are requiring the coaches of American Legion to all get background checks, but we are not requiring it of YMCA baseball. Now, they may very well do them. I don't know.
I'm happy to tell you, Chris.
I'm not done yet.
Okay.
And you may.
Fantastic.
When you have an organized coaching activity, that's the basis that's why we have the North Star agreement with T-Base here. They charge for organized coached activities on their field that they manage. And agreements are written. The only agreement that we're requiring is American Legion, and we're making an exception for everyone else. Everyone else.
I'll address that if you're finished.
Please.
With regard to YMCA, this is my opinion. YMCA, as I understand, runs an adult softball program. Background checks are not appropriate. I think when coaches are working with adults, adults are adults and they can take care of themselves and protect themselves. If I were rewriting T-bays and ice, I would include that requirement in there. I wasn't here, and neither was Jason when those agreements were made, and if we were revising them, I would certainly include that as a requirement. It is critically important that that be part of the American Legion contract because the county we are involved in that program because we are subsidizing that program, unlike, you can argue what that word means, but unlike any other program, we are giving them a substantial financial benefit to run their program this year, and so we are partnering with them financially for this. So the county is liable, and the county needs that protection to ensure that we are doing our due diligence, that we don't have the wrong kind of person working with small children. And so that is different than a program that is running their own program and coming in and using our facilities as a rental type group.
So am I hearing you say that the only reason that we're not just having them rent a field with a permit like we do everyone else is the fact that we're giving them a price break?
Not the only reason, because I did say that if I were rewriting the ice and the T-bays, I would still require that. So to me, the fact that they're children is number one.
Right.
And number two, while we don't have that in our agreements, we already know that T-bays and ice and the breakers all already do that.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
And
We went around this lap several times last night, and we're doing it again tonight. Mr. Cooney explained the reasons for that contract last night. If Commissioner Maxbauer wants to argue with him, I'd suggest that she take that offline and away from our meeting and do that. The main reason why we have an agreement with American Legion is they requested one, in my mind. So there's a long list of why we have reasons for it. It was all worked out and explained last night. I'm not exactly sure what our point is, but I think we ought to just let this go and move on.
Okay. Commissioner Maxbauer?
I did have the floor. At least I thought I did. I don't argue with the requirement of background checks. Please understand, I do not. We at the Commission on Aging voluntarily offered ourselves for background checks because we have access to clients' homes when we go out with the workers and actually see what the Commission on Aging, the type of work they perform. I'm not opposed to background checks. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we are treating, and I heard it again from, and this is just my opinion, which I am entitled to. In my opinion, we are treating American Legion differently and penalizing them.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Dorier?
As a board, once we make a decision, we all support that decision and we move ahead. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Anything else, Jason, for your report?
That wraps up the lease agreements. Just wanted to update the commission. The DNRE document, there was some discussion about whether or not Northwest Michigan Council of Governments could put together a DNRE agreement or a DNRE document. Ours is out of date. In talking with Matt McCauley from Northwest Michigan Council of Governments for them to do a project like that for a parks department our size and with the partnerships and the elements involved with our Parks and Recreation Department, that project would be about a $23,400 project for Northwest Michigan Council of Governments to do that. So I wanted to, in the letter from the COG is attached to your packet.
Commissioner Carstens?
The quote from the COG, if they did that document, would they include elements in that would make it usable as a master plan as well, or is it just more or less a duplication of what has been done already?
They would update that, the DNRE plan that we have that expired in 2008, and that would serve, the document they would create would serve as our new DNRE document that we often refer to as the DNR master plan.
Right.
So it's exactly for that purpose.
Just for that purpose, not for
Correct.
broader, okay, thank you.
Jason, assuming everything goes positively here, does it affect our timeline? Does it push our timeline up? Hopefully?
What, with COG doing it?
To get a DNR plan?
Yeah, they would certainly be able to get it done a lot quicker. Their staff would be able to do it quicker than I could with a variety of tasks I have on my plate.
Okay.
We don't have $23,000 budgeted for that. This was something that I talked to Northwest Michigan Council of Governments based on a suggestion Dennis the lawyer received, I think, from a county commissioner.
It was me.
Commissioner Carson?
I'm just a little bit confused. It might have been another entity. I'm involved with a number of places, but I heard a quote from them about doing some kind of plan for around $7,000. And they showed us one that they had done of Leelanau.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering why the difference between that $7,000 some quote and this.
A few different reasons. It has to do with the diversity of parkland that we have in Grand Traverse County versus Leelanau County, the quantity of parkland we have here, the number of user agreements, the number of interested citizens that would be interested in this master plan, because we have such a higher quantity of active user groups within our parks. We have partnerships with T-Bays, with ICE, with American Legion, with a variety of different organizations that would do that, as well as a more complex county system that would require additional, or require more scrutiny, maybe is the right word, related to public input.
Okay.
Finally, the Civic Center Master Plan, just to give the commission an update. We met on February 22nd at the Civic Center for the initial input for the Civic Center Master Plan. Commissioner Clark will be presenting additional information that he compiled from that meeting at our next meeting on April 21st. And I just wanted to remind, the last thing from my report, I wanted to remind the commissioners that there is a work session tentatively scheduled for Thursday, April 7th at the Civic Center at 6 p.m. for this commission.
All right. Thank you. One of the items that I was going to try to bring into that work session meeting was to talk about the fee structures and try to throw out some sort of basis or philosophical basis for how we set our fees, and which goes into what our purpose as a commission, as a department is. So you might want to think about that as we go into that work session, and I'll see if I can put together a presentation to try to focus some thoughts on that. On the lease agreements, Jason, would you be willing to gather some information from Mr. Cooney on his thoughts for user agreements and what his thoughts are on
Absolutely.
how they would be structured in different categories and what the primary objective would be? We'll hear his opinion and we'll think about it ourselves.
Absolutely.
Additionally, maybe, I'm not sure how he'd want to approach that, but maybe the best way is just a conversation. Jason explained to him the different scenarios, and then he can make an evaluation for himself as to whether we have some legal vulnerabilities or not, or need some improvement, or whether it's okay, and just kind of organize it, set it up so that we can take a look at it.
Okay.
I think it'll be a valuable exercise.
Yeah, he may have some good insight that views things from a different perspective. Okay. Jason, anything else?
Nope, that's it for my report.
All right. We enter our second segment of public comment.
Nope, I actually thought you were going to talk about the Civic Center. So, I'll let you know.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Notices and commissioner comments. Commissioner McNamara.
I went out to one of our parks today, and I took some photographs, and I would like us to discuss these photographs and the equipment and vehicles that are still sitting on the Meyer property. I bring this up every year, and this year will be no exception. So I will pass these pictures on to, and I just want you to know, Jason, that the picture of the inside, I did not go inside any buildings. I showed the open doors, and so that you could see that the doors were open, and I just stuck my camera in and flicked.
Is there a safety issue, or is there a
Huge.
security issue?
Huge. All the doors were open.
Can I ask a question?
So anyway, if we could just discuss it at next month's meeting, and if you would pass
Okay.
those down. Thank you.
Commissioner Dorier?
No, never mind, I withdraw my question.
All right. Anything else? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Support.
All right. Any discussion? No discussion on that one. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.